If you visit a local bookstore in New York City, you will often find a section dedicated to New York City books. There's so much material out there when it comes to the topic of New York City. And I'm not talking about your average tour guide books or coffee table books with pretty pictures or your dull general reference manuals. I'm talking about books of literary works, funny novels, and quirky topics. As someone who lives and works in New York City and has a YouTube channel dedicated to New York, I consume a lot of media, read a lot of books regarding this topic, and I want to share with you my reading experience. So in this video, I am going to talk about 4 books that I recommend that's related to New York City. Welcome and happy New Yorking. My name is Thea and you are watching Urban Caffeine, where we talk about anything and everything New York City, which includes urban history, transit, culture, and books worth reading. If this is your first time watching, I am so happy you found this channel. I invite you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. And if you're a returning viewer, you probably love New Yorking as much as I do. Let's cheers by hitting that like button. And if you are a lurker, don't worry, I don't know who hits that like button, so hit it anyways. I promise I don't know who you are. With regards to sharing what I read that's related to New York City, today I'm only sharing 4 books, but I do plan to expand this topic into a video series. I plan to share more books in future videos as I find them worth sharing. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any future book recommendations. So let's start with book number 1. My all-time favorite New York City book is Insomniac City, New York, Oliver and Me by Bill Hayes. There are 2 love stories going on in this book. The love story between the author and Oliver Sacks, and the love story between an individual and New York City. What I love about this book is that it puts to words what is so lovable about New York. The premise goes that the author moved from San Francisco to New York City because his partner passed away and he needed to reset his life. New York City played an important role in his process of moving on. And if you are not in love with New York already, you probably will be after reading this book. I recommend it for first-time New Yorkers, those that are recovering from a breakup, and those that find joy and fascination in the simplest things. In our society today, dog owners own poop bags and are expected to pick up after their pets. And if you don't, you will be given the stink eye and someone might even call you out. So word of the wise, pick up after your pet. But this wasn't always the case. There was a time where there was dog poop everywhere and nobody picked up after their dogs. And by the time there was talk about putting in a law that required people to pick up after their pets, people were in outrage, especially among the affluent. How dare would a law make someone pick up poop? The tale of how the poop scoop law came into existence is one of those that is so bizarre that you just can't make it up. And yes, there's an entire book dedicated to this topic, and it's not some dinky pamphlet. It's actually a decent length book. New York's Poop Scoop Law, Dogs, Dirt, and Due Process by Michael Brandow. This book is great for pet owners, those interested in the bizarre, or those that are interested in New York laws and policies. But if you want a shorter read and enjoy human interest stories, then I suggest 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. Although Nellie Bly is a pen name, her real name was Elizabeth Cochran Seaman. To put into perspective just how short this book is, if your average novel is about 400 pages, this is only about 100 pages long. The setting of this book was in 1887, and at the time, Roosevelt Island had an insane asylum. The city asylum is no longer there, but part of the original building is now the entryway of an apartment complex. Check out my video on Roosevelt Island where I talk about the layout of the island and also cover the Octagon. Link is in the description below. And our gal Nellie here found a way to get into the asylum so that she could write about it and talk about what really is happening in the facility. And in the end, she did affect change. There's something captivating about the writing and the story in a way that it was written in an era where the world wasn't as formalized as the way it is now. For example, her process of getting into the asylum is something you just cannot do today. She started with practicing how to be mentally ill in her own home, and then she spent the night at a woman's boarding house where she put to use what she practiced. If someone wanted to be admitted into a mental facility today, it would include a lot of legal confetti. If someone wanted to be admitted into a mental facility today to do an expose, the process would be way different. But what Nellie Bly did back then was groundbreaking. There wasn't a name for it yet, but today we call it investigative journalism. She also did other exposés in her lifetime. She was an interesting woman, to say the least. This little book is a great read. It's not fussy and clear to the point, partly because it was originally published in a newspaper. I recommend this for history buffs and those interested in feminism and mental health activism. The complete opposite of a short read is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I no longer have my copy on me because I gave it away, but I promise you it's a pretty hefty book. And while we're on that topic, I do have the habit of buying books and giving them away to friends that I think would like them. And it's a great way to invest in friendship. Imagine going to dinner and then showing up with a gift, and it makes the other person feel like they're in your thoughts. And also, it keeps the amount of books in the apartment at bay. If I remember correctly, The Goldfinch is about 800-ish pages, but it's not as gruesome as, say, Game of Thrones or the current craze right now, which is Dune. But it is not a dry read. Despite being this massively long book, I could not put it down. What makes this book relatable to New Yorkers is that it's set in New York City. And by that, I mean not just the physical New York City, but also the societal New York City. Meaning the main character navigates both the physical New York City and New York City society. The premise goes, Theo was 13 at the time when he was caught in a terrorist attack at the Met Museum in Manhattan. During the events, his mother, who was with him, died at the scene, and he somehow came into possession of this art piece. The story follows him into adulthood, during which he ends up living in different locations after the death of his mother. These are a wealthy friend's Park Avenue family home, a place in the desert of Las Vegas, and then back to New York City in the East Village with an antique furniture maker and dealer. And it's the possession of this art piece that pulls him into the illegal underground world. I recommend this for art enthusiasts, New York enthusiasts, and those that love coming of age stories. Like I said, I plan to make more videos of New York City books as I compile the ones that I find worth sharing and recommending. Is there a book that you would like to share? Comment down below. I would love to know what that is. I also have affiliate links to all the books that I mentioned in this video. They are in the description below. And if you are going to buy these on Amazon, it would be great if you would use my affiliate links because it does help out the channel. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss future videos. Don't forget to like this video so that our channel won't just wither and die and we can continue making New York City videos. With that, thank you so much for watching. Happy reading and happy New Yorking.